It was a quiet morning in the city, the kind of morning where the sun is just rising, casting a soft golden glow over the streets. People were starting their day, some rushing to work, others walking their dogs or sipping coffee from small paper cups. Among the crowd, a man walked quietly, almost blending in. He wasn't there for an event or a photo shoot. He was just taking a peaceful walk, enjoying the calm before the day got busy. That man was Keanu Reeves. As he strolled along the sidewalk, something unusual caught his eye. A small group of people had gathered near the edge of the street, but the crowd wasn't big, and most people were just glancing and walking away. Curious, he slowed his pace and noticed two children sitting on the curb. They looked very young, around 7 or 8 maybe. They were twins, dressed in slightly worn clothes, and they were holding a small toy car between them. The car looked old, scratched in a few places, but it was clear it had once been loved. The twins had a small sign placed in front of them. Written in uneven, careful handwriting, it read, "Selling our toy car to help our mom." Keanu paused. The words were simple, but they carried a heavy weight. It wasn't just about selling a toy. It was about helping someone they loved. He could see the effort in their tiny hands, how carefully they held the car as if it were precious, and yet they were willing to part with it. He watched them quietly for a few moments, noticing the worry in their faces. Their mother was nearby, struggling to carry a bag of groceries back toward a small, modest home a few blocks away. She looked tired, her steps slow, her face lined with worry, and Keanu's heart went out to her. The children glanced at her often, as if checking to make sure she was okay. Every now and then they whispered to each other, pointing at the car or at passers-by, trying to figure out how to sell it. The scene struck Keanu deeply. It wasn't just the children trying to help their mother. It was the courage and determination they showed at such a young age. Most people their age would have been playing, laughing, or watching cartoons, but these children were here, doing something serious, something that mattered. He noticed how their eyes lit up when someone even looked at the toy car, how they tried to explain softly why they were selling it. Yet most people just kept walking. Some gave a quick glance, a shrug, and moved on, too busy with their own lives to notice the little act of bravery in front of them. Keanu could see their frustration growing. One of the twins fidgeted with the toy, turning it over in his hands as if trying to fix it, while the other kept looking down the street, hoping someone would stop. He could hear their whispers, faint but clear. "Do you think anyone will buy it? I hope Mom won't be upset if we don't sell it today." Their voices were small, almost drowned out by the city noise, but they carried so much emotion. It was a mix of hope, fear, and love. He felt a pull in his chest, a mixture of sadness and admiration. These children were doing everything they could, yet the world around them seemed indifferent. He noticed how careful they were with the toy car, treating it with respect even as they tried to let go of it for the sake of their mother. It was a small object, but in their hands it represented something much bigger. A chance to help the person they loved most in the world. Keanu moved a little closer, but kept his distance. He didn't want to scare them, didn't want to make them feel like this was a performance or a spectacle. He just wanted to understand, to witness the courage and love they were showing. He saw the twins' mother glance their way, her face softening when she saw them trying. She gave them a small, tired smile, the kind of smile that tries to hide worry but can't fully mask it. Her eyes were filled with pride even as they showed exhaustion. She wasn't forcing them to do this. It was their choice. Their love for her had pushed them to act. The morning passed slowly. A few people stopped to ask about the toy car, and the twins explained gently why they were selling it. Some shook their heads politely, said they didn't have money, and walked away. A couple of people offered kind words, telling them to be brave or that their mother was lucky to have them. But still, no one bought the car. Keanu could see the twins' shoulders slump each time someone walked past without stopping. Yet even in that disappointment, there was a spark in their eyes. They hadn't given up. They were determined to keep trying, and that small determination made Keanu feel a mix of sadness and awe. He remembered how hard it was to be a child, to feel powerless, and yet these two were doing something meaningful. He noticed the way they divided tasks naturally. One would talk to people, explaining the situation, while the other would hold the car and try to make it look appealing. They whispered to each other about who would speak next, how to hold the car better, how to catch someone's attention. Their teamwork, Their silent understanding and their love for their mother were extraordinary. As he observed them, Keanu felt a sense of quiet respect. This wasn't a story of sadness alone. It was a story of courage, love, and resilience. The children were small, but their hearts were enormous. He thought about the thousands of people rushing past, most unaware of the little lives unfolding right in front of them. Yet here were two children, showing the kind of selflessness that many adults never reach in a lifetime. The twins' mother finally made her way back, struggling with the groceries. The children jumped up to help her, leaving the toy car on the curb for a moment. She thanked them softly, ruffling their hair, and they beamed. It was a brief moment of normalcy, a reminder that their actions were about love, not just survival. Keanu watched quietly, feeling a mixture of hope and heartbreak. He realized that sometimes the most powerful stories are the quietest ones, the ones that happen in small corners of the world, unnoticed by most. He stayed for a few more minutes, just observing. Every now and then he would see a flicker of frustration or worry cross the twins' faces, but it was always replaced by determination. They were resilient, and their love for their mother gave them strength. Keanu could feel the weight of the world on their small shoulders, and yet they didn't crumble. They carried it with a kind of grace and courage that was almost unimaginable for children their age. The sun was higher now, casting longer shadows across the street. Keanu felt something shift inside him, a quiet understanding of the power of love and the innocence of children. He realized that no matter how small the gesture, even the attempt to sell a worn-out toy car to help someone you love could carry immense significance. It was a reminder that acts of kindness and courage could happen anywhere. And sometimes the simplest actions had the deepest meaning. And so, he continued to watch, quietly rooting for the twins, hoping that someone would notice, hoping that they would succeed in helping their mother. In that simple moment on a quiet street in a busy city, Keanu Reeves felt a profound connection to the small, powerful story unfolding before him, a story about love, courage, and the kind of selflessness that could change lives, even if the world didn't always notice. Keanu Reeves stayed on the sidewalk, a few steps away from the twins, watching as they tried again to attract attention. The city noise seemed louder now, the hum of cars, the chatter of people, the occasional bark of a dog, but the children didn't seem distracted. Their focus was on the small toy car, the way it might help their mother, and the hope that someone, anyone, might stop and care. After a few minutes, he noticed the twins exchanging quick whispers. One pointed toward a man walking past, while the other nodded slightly and lifted the toy car higher, holding it out like it might magically catch someone's attention. Their actions were careful, precise, almost rehearsed, but there was still a nervous energy in their movements. Every time a passerby glanced at the car but kept walking, their faces fell a little, and the younger one's lip trembled ever so slightly. Keanu could see the weight of disappointment on their small shoulders. It was hard to watch, yet he felt a deep admiration for them. Most adults would have given up by now. Many would have complained or become frustrated. But these two children refused to quit. Their love for their mother gave them strength that seemed almost impossible for their age. Finally, he decided to step closer, quietly, so as not to startle them. He didn't want to make it about himself. He just wanted to understand, to witness their courage firsthand. As he approached, the twins turned toward him a little startled, unsure if this stranger might be annoyed, angry, or even unkind. But there was something gentle in his presence, calm, patient, and sincere. "Good morning," he said softly, kneeling slightly to meet their eye level. "Is this toy car for sale?" His voice was calm and kind, and for a moment the twins hesitated. Then with a shy nod, they answered together, explaining that they were selling it to help their mom. Their voices were quiet, almost trembling, but filled with sincerity. Keanu listened carefully, noticing every word. He could feel the emotions behind their sentences, the love for their mother, the worry about whether they could really help her, and the hope that someone would care. The children didn't seem interested in themselves. They weren't trying to earn money for toys or candy. This was about their mother, about helping someone they loved in a very real, tangible way. He asked a few more questions just to understand. "How is your mom doing?" he asked gently. The twins glanced toward the small house down the street where their mother had gone to rest for a moment. "She's tired," one whispered. "She works a lot, but she's sick sometimes, and we wanted to help." Keanu could see the honesty in their eyes. There was no exaggeration, no attempt to impress. Just pure simple truth. He noticed how carefully the older twin held the car, as if it were both precious and fragile, and how the younger twin kept looking around, hoping someone else might stop. The children's focus was unwavering, their small bodies carrying the weight of responsibility with a courage that made him pause. He realized that what they were doing was much bigger than a simple sale. It wasn't about the toy car. It was about love, care, and selflessness. He thought about how many adults would struggle to make such a pure choice. How many would complain about the effort, or give up when things got hard. But here were two children, showing a level of maturity and compassion that was rare even in grown-ups. After a few moments, Keanu reached into his pocket. He didn't say anything at first, just observed as the twins continued to try to sell the car. One of them noticed his movement and looked up, eyes wide with curiosity and a little caution. Keanu smiled softly, making sure his gesture felt natural, not intimidating. Then quietly, he handed the exact amount they had hoped to earn for the car. The twins froze for a moment, unsure if they had understood him correctly. Then as realization sank in, their eyes widened and a bright, almost uncontrollable smile spread across their faces. You mean it?" one whispered, voice shaking with disbelief. Keanu nodded, smiling gently. "Yes, I know you want to help your mom. This will give you a start." For a moment, the twins couldn't speak. Their emotions were too strong. Relief, happiness, gratitude, and a little amazement all mixed together. They hugged the toy car close, then looked up at Keanu with awe. "Thank you," they said, their voices small but full of sincerity. "Thank you so much." Keanu watched as the twins ran toward their mother's house, carrying the money in the car with care. The mother looked up, surprised, and then her face softened as she understood what had happened. The children explained quickly, pointing toward the stranger who had helped them, and she smiled with a mixture of gratitude and relief. She could hardly believe that someone would notice, that someone would care enough to step in. As the twins went inside to help their mother, Keanu stayed on the sidewalk for a few moments, watching quietly. But then something caught his attention, a small movement across the street. A street musician was sitting nearby, playing a soft tune on a worn guitar. People were walking past without stopping, ignoring him completely. Keanu noticed something extraordinary. Just before going inside, the twins paused to drop a small coin into the musician's open case. It wasn't much, but it was their way of sharing, of giving even when they had so little. Keanu smiled, realizing that their kindness extended beyond their immediate struggle. They had learned to care not just for their mother, but for others in small, meaningful ways. Watching that simple act, he felt a profound lesson in humanity. Here were children who had nothing, yet they gave what little they could to someone else. It wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about empathy, love, and understanding. Keanu realized that true courage isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, humble, and powerful in the way it touches people's hearts. He began walking again, slowly, but with a different feeling than before. The city felt less noisy, less chaotic. The story he had witnessed left a mark on him. He thought about how small gestures, buying a toy car from children or offering a little encouragement, can ripple through lives in ways people might never fully see. He thought about how the twins' mother would now have a bit more relief, and how the children would carry the lesson of kindness and determination with them forever. Keanu also thought about the world around him, the many people rushing past, unaware of these small stories unfolding every day. He realized that true impact doesn't always come from grand actions or famous deeds. Sometimes it comes from noticing, from caring, from taking a single step to help. The twins' courage, the mother's resilience, the musician's quiet talent, all of it reminded him that life's most meaningful moments are often small, unnoticed, and deeply human. As he walked away, he felt a quiet satisfaction not for himself, but for the lives he had glimpsed. He knew the twins would continue to help their mother, that their small act of courage had sparked something bigger than just selling a toy car. He knew their story wasn't over, and he felt honored to have witnessed the beginning. In that moment, Keanu Reeves understood something simple but profound. Kindness matters, courage matters, and love matters. The world might be busy, loud, and indifferent at times, but small hearts with brave intentions can make a difference in ways that no one might immediately notice. But that can change lives forever. Keanu Reeves stayed on the edge of the sidewalk, watching the twins rush inside with their mother. There was a brief moment of quiet outside, a pause in the city noise that made him feel like he had stepped into a different world, a world where small acts of courage and love could feel enormous. He thought about the moment he handed the money to the children, about the way their eyes lit up with surprise and gratitude. It was a small gesture, but the effect had been immediate and profound. As he lingered, he noticed something else that made him stop. Across the street, a few other children were playing, kicking a small ball back and forth. But his attention was drawn to the twins again. They had returned to the curb, this time with a different kind of energy. Their mother had given them a nod, encouraging them to take a short break, and they were laughing quietly, still clutching the toy car in their hands. Then Keanu saw something that made him pause in amazement. The twins noticed the street musician he had spotted earlier, a man playing an old guitar with worn strings, sitting quietly as people passed by. Most ignored him, but the twins didn't. They stopped, whispered to each other, and then approached the musician. One of them took a small coin from their pocket, the one they had managed to save from their own allowance or from what Keanu had given them, and handed it to him. The musician looked up, startled at first. He hadn't expected anyone to notice him, let alone these small children who clearly had very little to give themselves. But when he saw the smiles on their faces, the sincerity in their eyes, his own expression softened. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was more than that. It was recognition, kindness, and respect. The twins didn't say much. One of them simply said, "Thank you for playing. We like your music." And the other nodded, their eyes bright. Keanu felt a lump in his throat. He realized that this simple act carried more meaning than most people would ever notice. These children who had just worked so hard to help their mother had not forgotten to care for someone else even when they themselves had little. It was the kind of generosity that could only come from pure hearts, from people who understood empathy before the world taught them otherwise. He noticed how the musician's hands shook slightly as he accepted the coin. He nodded to the children, a quiet smile breaking across his face. "Thank you," he said, his voice low and warm. Not many people notice anymore. The twins just smiled back, their faces glowing with innocence and satisfaction. They didn't care about recognition. They were just being human, just being kind. Keanu thought about the contrast between the hustle of the city and this small act of connection. Most people were in a hurry, consumed by their own lives, their own worries, and yet these children paused even briefly to make the world a little better for someone else. It was a small ripple, but he could feel its power. He thought about how easily kindness spreads, how a single action can touch lives in ways you might never see. After a few moments, the twins ran back to the curb, still holding the toy car. They seemed energized, as if this small act of giving had lifted their spirits. They laughed quietly, and one whispered to the other, "We should always help people." The other nodded, eyes wide, as if realizing for the first time that the world wasn't just about what they could get. It was also about what they could give. Keanu watched this unfold, feeling deeply moved. He understood that this wasn't a story about a toy car or even about money. It was about lessons that life teaches quietly, about courage, love, and empathy that shine brightest in moments of struggle. The twins had shown him something he had known in theory, but rarely saw so clearly in practice: the power of small hearts to make big differences. He noticed people passing by, glancing briefly at the twins but mostly ignoring the small acts of kindness taking place. Keanu realized that the world could be indifferent, even harsh, but that didn't mean the goodness in people didn't exist. Sometimes it just had to be noticed by someone who took the time to see it, and he had taken that time. The twins paused again, holding the toy car and looking toward their home. It was clear that they were ready to continue their effort to help their mother, but now there was a new spark in their movements. They walked with a little more confidence, their heads held slightly higher, as if the small acts of giving and receiving had reminded them that even tiny efforts could matter. Keanu stayed a little longer, curious to see what would happen next, and that's when he noticed another quiet gesture, one that made him feel both surprised and hopeful. A neighbor who had been watching from across the street came forward slowly. They were carrying a small basket of fruits, offering it to the twins' mother. It wasn't a grand gift, but it was practical and thoughtful, a way of saying, "We see you and we want to help." The mother's eyes widened when she accepted the basket. She looked at the twins, then at the neighbor, and finally at Keanu, as if understanding that kindness could ripple through the smallest corners of the world. She hugged the basket close, almost overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness. Keanu felt a sense of warmth spread through him. This was the kind of moment that reminded him why it was important to notice the small, human stories happening around us every day. The twins ran to their mother, giggling and excited, and Keanu took a step back, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He realized that this was a story not about fame or wealth or dramatic heroics. It was about humanity, about courage, kindness, and love that didn't need recognition. It was a story that could touch anyone who took the time to see it. He thought about how the twins would remember this day for the rest of their lives. They had learned that helping someone could inspire others to do the same. They had learned that small gestures could create ripples that went far beyond their immediate sight. And they had learned that the world, while often busy and harsh, still had room for compassion. Keanu felt humbled by the experience. He had witnessed courage in its purest form, not the kind that sought attention, but the kind that quietly pushed forward because of love. The twins' love for their mother had motivated them, but their hearts had extended that love outward, touching a street musician and inspiring a neighbor to act. It was a chain of humanity, a chain that Keanu realized could continue indefinitely if more people took the time to care. As he walked away, he reflected on the lesson of the morning. True heroism isn't always about saving the world in dramatic ways. Sometimes it's about noticing someone who is struggling, taking a small action and allowing kindness to flow naturally. The twins had taught him that lesson better than any speech or story ever could. And yet he also knew that their journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more days when it would be hard to help their mother, more moments when the world seemed indifferent. But the seeds of courage and compassion had already been planted, and that gave him hope. He understood that small acts, even when unnoticed by most, could create a foundation for resilience and generosity that lasts a lifetime. Keanu took one last look at the twins' small home in the distance. He saw their mother smiling, the children laughing quietly as they tried to share their news of the morning, and he felt a deep sense of peace. This wasn't a story about a toy car or even about money. It was about love, humanity, and the quiet power of small hearts determined to make a difference. The city noise returned, cars honking, people rushing past, life moving on. But for Keanu Reeves, something had shifted. He had witnessed a moment that reminded him that every person, no matter how small or seemingly powerless, could inspire change. He realized that the world is full of these moments, often unnoticed, but powerful enough to shape lives if only someone cares to see. As he turned the corner and continued his walk, he carried with him a story that would stay in his heart forever. A story of two small children, a toy car, and a chain of kindness that had reminded him of what it truly means to be human. After watching the twins return to their mother with the small basket of fruit from their neighbor, Keanu Reeves lingered a little longer on the sidewalk, feeling an unusual warmth inside. The city was alive with noise, people walking briskly, car horns honking, and the faint smells of food and street vendors drifting through the air. But amidst all this chaos, something extraordinary had happened right in front of him, something quiet yet powerful, something that reminded him why he loved observing life as it unfolded. The twins were now inside their small home, their mother smiling and organizing the basket of fruit. Keanu could see through the window that the mother's tired eyes were brighter than before, a soft glow of relief replacing the fatigue that had been there earlier. The children ran back and forth, talking excitedly, their small voices full of energy and hope. But then one of them paused at the window, looking back toward the street where Keanu was standing. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable, but Keanu caught it. A wave, a shy, almost hesitant wave. Their eyes held gratitude that went beyond words. Keanu raised his hand slightly in return, smiling, feeling a connection that was fleeting yet deeply human. He realized that sometimes the smallest recognition, the simplest acknowledgement, could carry as much meaning as any grand gesture. As he continued to watch, he noticed the twins had something else in mind. They grabbed a few of the remaining coins from their small collection, those that were left after buying the toy car from themselves and giving a bit to the musician. Carefully, they set off toward a small community garden a block away. Keanu's curiosity was piqued. He decided to follow at a distance, careful not to disturb them but wanting to understand what they were planning. When they arrived at the garden, Keanu saw that it was a small, neglected plot, with a few flowers growing amidst weeds and patches of dry soil. The twins knelt down, spreading out their coins, and started talking quietly. One of them was pointing to certain spots in the garden, the other nodding in agreement. Keanu realized that the children were planning to buy seeds. Even with their limited resources, they were thinking about planting something that could grow and flourish, something that could give back to the community. Keanu felt his chest tighten. Here were children who had spent the morning trying to help their mother, showing kindness to a musician, inspiring a neighbor, and now they were thinking about the world beyond their own struggles. It was remarkable. Their small hands, so used to carrying burdens, were now working to create life in a place that had been forgotten by others. The twins carefully placed their coins on a small table set up by a volunteer at the garden. The volunteer smiled warmly at them, kneeling to meet their eye level. "Are you looking for seeds?" they asked gently. The twins nodded enthusiastically, explaining that they wanted to plant flowers and vegetables to help make the garden better. The volunteer's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful," they said. "Even small seeds can grow into something amazing." Keanu watched closely as the twins chose tiny packets of seeds, bright flowers, small vegetables, herbs. Their excitement was contagious. They talked quietly about what would grow best, how they would water the plants, and how they would come back every day to care for them. It was clear that they weren't just thinking about themselves. They were thinking about their neighborhood, about the people who might enjoy the garden, and even about the joy that their mother could feel seeing them care for something living. Keanu felt a wave of admiration and humility. These children were teaching lessons that many adults had forgotten: the importance of patience, of giving, of nurturing, and of hope. The act of planting seeds was symbolic in every sense. It was a quiet promise that good things, no matter how small, could grow if cared for with love and attention. The twins carefully planted the seeds in neat little rows, their fingers brushing the soil as they worked. They whispered words of encouragement to the seeds, giggling softly as if the plants could hear them. One of the twins gently patted the soil, making sure it was firm, while the other watered the small patches with a tiny can they had brought along. It was meticulous, thoughtful work, full of care and dedication. Keanu took a step back and smiled. He realized that this moment was teaching him something about resilience. These children were facing challenges most adults could barely imagine, yet they were finding ways to create beauty and kindness in the world, even when life itself seemed unfair. Their strength wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, consistent, and profoundly human. After planting, the twins stood back to admire their work. Their faces were full of pride, yet there was a softness in their expressions that suggested they understood how much work lay ahead. Keanu noticed how they whispered to each other about returning every day, about making sure the plants grew healthy, about the possibility of sharing vegetables or flowers with neighbors. They weren't thinking about recognition or reward. They were thinking about life, care, and love. As Keanu watched, he realized that this small act of planting seeds mirrored everything he had seen that day. The toy car had been a symbol of their determination to help their mother. Their small donation to the street musician had shown empathy and generosity. The basket from the neighbor reflected the ripple effect of kindness. And now these seeds represented hope, resilience, and the potential for growth that could continue long after this morning. Suddenly, a few people walking by stopped to notice the twins working in the garden. A passerby leaned over to comment on the bright flowers, smiling at the small children tending to the soil. The twins paused for a moment, shy but proud, and nodded politely. Keanu could see the impact of their efforts even in these brief moments. Their care was contagious, inspiring small glimpses of appreciation and kindness in others, even if only for a few seconds. The mother eventually joined them, carrying a small watering can of her own. She knelt beside her children, smiling softly, and began helping them water the plants. The twins giggled, excited to have her join, and together they worked as a small team, planting, watering, and tending to the garden. Keanu felt a lump in his throat. The love between the mother and her children was evident in every action: the gentle guidance, the shared laughter, the mutual respect and encouragement. As the morning passed, Keanu observed more quietly. He noticed how the mother's presence seemed to lift the children's spirits. how her tired face now carried a glow of pride and gratitude. She encouraged them with soft words, celebrating their efforts, teaching them patience, and instilling a sense of accomplishment. It was a small but profound moment of connection, proof that love and support could nurture courage and kindness in even the youngest hearts. Keanu realized that this day, which had begun with a simple attempt to sell a toy car, had blossomed into something far greater. It wasn't just about helping one family survive a challenge. It was about showing that kindness, courage, and empathy could spread in ways that were both unexpected and transformative. The twins' actions had inspired others, created hope, and reminded everyone watching, including Keanu himself, that small hearts could do big things. By the time the twins finished planting and tidying up the garden, the area looked more alive, more cared for. The small patches of soil were dotted with seeds, the beginnings of flowers, vegetables, and herbs that would grow over time. Keanu knew that this moment, simple as it was, would be remembered by these children forever. It was a lesson in responsibility, generosity, and the quiet power of action. As they packed up their small tools and returned home with their mother, Keanu followed at a safe distance, feeling a sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just a story of charity or giving. It was a story of courage, resilience, and the beauty of small hearts willing to act. It was a story of life teaching lessons in the most unexpected ways. Through the actions of children who reminded the world of what truly mattered, Keanu walked away finally. Glancing back one last time at the small family heading home, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had witnessed something extraordinary, not because it was dramatic or flashy, but because it was profoundly human. It was a day filled with courage, kindness, hope, and the reminder that even the smallest actions can have lasting effects. Keanu Reeves walked slowly down the street, his mind still buzzing with what he had just witnessed. The twins, their mother, the street musician, the neighbor, and even the little garden. They had all created a chain of kindness and courage that felt almost too pure for the busy city around them. Yet he realized that the story wasn't over. Life often has a way of revealing its most powerful lessons in the quietest, most unexpected moments. As he turned a corner, Keanu noticed the twins standing near a small community board outside their building. They were carefully tacking up a hand-drawn sign with bright colors. Curious, he stepped closer without making his presence obvious. The sign read, "Help our garden grow, every little bit counts." There were sketches of flowers, vegetables, and smiling stick figures that represented the children and their mother. It was simple, heartfelt, and full of energy. The twins had taken it upon themselves to spread the message about their little garden project. They wanted their neighbors to participate, to help, or even just to notice the small patch of green that they had nurtured with so much care. Keanu smiled quietly, touched by their thoughtfulness. They weren't seeking attention for themselves. They simply wanted to share their joy and involve others in something positive. Just then, the mother came outside to check on them. She knelt beside her children, helping them adjust the sign. Her eyes were soft but filled with pride. She whispered something to the twins, and they giggled, nodding eagerly. Keanu could almost hear her words even from a distance. Words of encouragement, of reassurance, and of love that reminded them that even the smallest efforts were meaningful. As Keanu continued to watch, something remarkable happened. A few neighbors passing by on their way to work paused to notice the sign. One of them, an older woman carrying groceries, smiled and nodded at the twins. "This is wonderful," she said warmly. "I'll bring some seeds next time I come." The twins' faces lit up with delight. Another neighbor, a man walking a small dog, crouched down to ask what they were planting, clearly intrigued and impressed by their dedication. It was then that Keanu realized something truly shocking and beautiful. The twins' small act of selling a toy car to help their mother had set off a chain reaction far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Their courage, their determination, and their kindness had not only helped their family but had also inspired others to act, to care, and to contribute in their own ways. This wasn't just a story of survival. It was a story of transformation, rippling outward from a single, simple act. Keanu felt a lump in his throat as he watched the twins talking animatedly with the neighbors. Their laughter rang out, clear and bright, cutting through the usual city noise. The mother stood back, smiling softly, letting her children shine in the moment. She had faced many challenges, but now she could see the result of their efforts, not just in immediate help or small gifts, but in the way the community had responded to their initiative. Suddenly, the street musician appeared again, quietly carrying his guitar case. He had come to see the twins' garden project. When he noticed the children and their mother, he paused, a gentle smile spreading across his face. He knelt to place a few coins on the edge of the garden, a quiet contribution to their efforts. The twins looked at him in surprise and gratitude. They had already given what they could, and now others were joining in, inspired by the children's actions. Keanu felt a wave of admiration and disbelief. The story had come full circle. What began as a small, almost desperate attempt by children to help their mother had grown into a moment of community connection and shared purpose. People were noticing, caring, and taking part, not because they were asked, but because they had been inspired by courage and kindness. It was a powerful reminder of how human hearts respond to authenticity. As the morning stretched into early afternoon, more neighbors stopped by. Some brought watering cans, others brought small packets of seeds, and a few brought snacks to share. The twins laughed, sharing the food with their mother and the musician, grateful for the kindness that now surrounded them. Keanu realized that this was the moment where hope and generosity truly intersected. The smallest actions had grown into something larger than anyone could have predicted. Then something happened that shook him emotionally. The twins' mother gently pulled them aside and handed them a small envelope. They opened it carefully and gasped. Inside were letters from neighbors, notes of encouragement, and even a small check from someone who wanted to contribute to the family's needs. The twins' eyes widened with wonder. The mother hugged them tightly, tears streaming down her face, and whispered words that the twins had never expected to hear. "You have inspired so many people today. You did something incredible." Keanu's heart swelled. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment that made all the small gestures, the toy car, the coins, the planting, feel profoundly meaningful. He had seen courage in action, and now he was witnessing the tangible impact of that courage on real lives. The family was no longer struggling alone. They had a community standing beside them, inspired by their bravery and love. The twins looked around at the garden, the neighbors, the musician, and finally at their mother. They realized that the world wasn't just about challenges or